Thank you.
Just 1 second, I'll put it up. Right. Right.
We should do it like the Sky News and ask what's in the background and any pictures and stuff.
Okay, so I think we're on air.
Okay, councillors, I'll declare the meeting open. Thank you for your patience for those couple of minutes. Just get those couple of technical glitches out of the way. Members be advised that the proceedings of this meeting will be recorded and will be put online after the meeting. Mr. General Manager, could I have any apologies, please?
Mr. Chairman, we have an apology from Member Councillor Kingham.
Can I have a move and accept it, a second to accept that?
Happy to move it.
I'll second that.
Ring, Councillor Leslie. All four?
Aye.
Aye.
Carried, thank you.
Mr. Chair, just before you go on, we're not hearing David Young very well, the General Manager.
I'll just get him to try. Oh, I see.
Can you hear that now?
It's better.
That's better. Okay.
Yep.
I'll just remember to turn the microphone on.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor, thanks for that, Mr. Councillor Reynolds, for that. No public questions, no nil confirmation of minutes. The councillors' minutes of the ordinary meeting up Macquarie County Council the 17th of April 2020.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move the minutes with one amendment that we note that Councillor Fry was present at the meeting.
Yes, he just gave me a signal about that. Mr. General Manager, can you note that? With that amendment made, can I have a mover and a seconder to accept?
I'll move that.
Happy to second it.
And that was Councillor Ring, I think.
Yes, it was.
Yes, thank you. Sorry. Just bear with me at times. Okay, the confirmation minutes, all four?
Aye.
Carried. Mr. GM, have we got any disclosures of interest?
Mr. Chairman, there's no disclosures of interest presented.
Can I have a mover and a seconder for that, please?
Happy to move it.
Councillor Ring, all four, against carried. Okay, the County Chairman's report. Item 1, Statement of Investments as of the 31st of May 2020. We have a recommendation there, councillors. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please?
Happy to move it.
Councillor Reynolds, Councillor Fry, you happy to second that? Any questions? Councillors? Was that someone, sorry?
I have
No
a question,
questions?
Mr. Chair.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Reynolds, please.
That's fine. And I think it was Councillor McKibben was coming in to second it. But with regard to the General Manager, we seem to have gone up quite substantially in our net worth to 1.15 million. Could I have a quick explanation on why we've gone up at the time of the year when you think we'd be at our lowest?
Mr. GM.
Mr. Chairman, the reason for that is simply the LLS contribution for the year, which was much later than it ought to have been. So we've just received their revenue, 300,000, very late in the year.
And the second question, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
With regard to the book or whatever it was with restricted funds, did we ever get a resolution, given that they were carried forward in our funds from, as in last financial year to this financial year? Has that been sorted, or are they still just sitting there in restricted funds?
Mr. General Manager.
Mr. Chairman, LLS closed down to a large extent recently and were unable to proceed with that project. I checked with our auditors who have confirmed that it won't have any impact on our performance for the year. It'll simply stay in restricted funds until such time it's expended.
Thank you.
Any other question, Councillor Reynolds? If all councillors, if there's no other questions, all four?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. I'm sorry, Councillor Leslie, you?
I'm voting for it, yes. I just put my hand up.
Oh, sorry. Wasn't sure if you're telling me to stop. Councillors, item 2, Legislative and Compliance Register. We have a recommendation at the bottom of the page. Can I have a move under a seconder, please? Councillor Fry, are you happy to move a seconder?
Yeah.
Councillor McKibben?
Thank you.
Councillors, any questions? Yes, Councillor McKibben. Can you hear me? Yes?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, yep.
With this legislative requirement or compliance with the legislation register, do we also have to put other legislation that we should be complying with? I did go through it, but for instance, do we have to put the, I can't remember, the Biosecurity Diversity Act, work health and safety legislation, state and federal, all those sorts of things?
Mr. GM.
Mr. Chairman, you may recall that the reason that we prepared this document was following on from the Auditor General report last year and our own auditors who suggested that rather than just having a calendar of when we would do meet key target dates as specified in the legislation, that we'd actually put it together with the source of the authority, etc., etc. So the specific answer to your question is it isn't supposed to be recording every legislative obligation we have, but if you have a deadline, a reporting date, or otherwise that is really fundamental, and let's say you get into trouble if you don't meet it, that's what this is meant for. Clearly, there's a multitude of other legislative obligations, and I suppose I touched on some of them right at the end where I said they were ongoing. You could put a lot more in there if you wanted to, but they would just be an ongoing responsibility, I believe.
Do you have thoughts, Councillor McKibben?
Because the nature of the wording of it would suggest that we have listed all legislation we have to comply with, which I don't want someone to sort of think that's the case. That was why the reason for my question. I wondered whether we should rename, if we're not going to do that, we should rename it. Something to say reporting, legislative reporting requirement.
If the councillors are so happy that we could add to the movement, a seconder of this recommendation at the point that we look at the naming of a document based on the need of the information we need to record in or on a regular basis.
Well, that's why I suggest the word reporting might be appropriate.
Yep.
If you call something a legislative compliance register, it has the unintended consequences of maybe you've listed all legislation you're meant to comply with, which I don't think we really want to do.
Well, if councillors would be happy, either we can put that a point B in, or we could, the general manager could go back and between the meetings, we could throw about some names and exactly what you're talking about in reporting and come back to you, and next time it's reported, we'll recognise a potential new name that all the councillors have agreed upon. That's more in keeping with what
I'm happy with that. I'm as I said, I'm not stuck up on it. I'm just it just worries me that
I'll get the general manager to make a comment, please.
Mr. Chairman, I understand the issue there, Councillor McKibben, and I agree. I think the name itself is actually the title required by the auditors and the Auditor General, but I suspect the way to mitigate that problem would be either to put a leading paragraph in there, basically in a sense of a disclaimer, meaning this is not dealing with every legislative compliance obligation we have, or alternatively we could make it the legislative, in brackets, reporting compliance register, something like that, but I think I need to have those three words in it there somewhere.
Look, I'm happy with either way, but I just think we need to make it clear in case someone picks this up. Oh, this is not all the legislation you've got to comply with.
Can I just get a general agreement with all the councillors? If we leave a recommendation is and the general manager goes away and looks at this, that we'll come back to you within the coming week or two to just get to find out what we require legislatively and how we can cover what Councillor McKibben said, which is very true.
I'm happy with that, but I've got no problems with it as it is either.
Fair enough. Councillor
Question,
Reynolds,
Mr.
have you, I just might go through you all. Have you got any comment?
No.
No? Councillor Ring, you're right.
Yeah, I'm happy with it.
Councillor Capel? Who else have I got?
Yeah, I'm happy.
Councillor Fry?
Whichever way it goes, I'm happy.
Thank you. Well, look, we'll do that, councillors.
Question.
Yep. Who's that? Oh, Councillor Reynolds.
Councillor Reynolds. Are we moving to defer this recommendation to the next one and come back with the correct wording, or are we voting on the recommendation here? What are we doing?
What I propose to do, to leave it as is at the moment, with what we've got there at the moment, because we believe the wording is required by legislation. But so if we leave it as it is, with the point here that will be in our notes that commentary was had about the potential naming in relation to requirements of do we need to report all documents, and the General Manager will come back to you with what we are required to do and what we can do.
I have a question about this, if I may.
Yes?
Just for my own curiosity, how does the administration just pull these items out? For example, something that's the due date, the 30th of June 2020, how do you remember to pull it out from this document as opposed to just thinking, you know, finding it later on that it was there and you missed it? Just a curiosity as to your procedures, if I may.
Good point, Mr. General Manager. Could you answer that?
It gives me an extra pastime, I can assure you, members. So what happens is the Office of Local Government actually started the ball rolling with what they refer to as their statutory compliance calendar. And it has the really important things that they care about in terms of getting your annual operating plans in place, having mayoral elections and all that sort of stuff. And then the next part of it is you get in circulars and all the rest of it. But I had a calendar, actually electronic calendar with all of these things in it, and the auditor said, that's fantastic, but the calendar doesn't show the source of authority or obligation, so you need to have this type of document. And what I do is every month, because of the way I've laid it out, it's effectively a rolling calendar, and every month at the start I look at what has to be done, and that's generally why you end up with reports on some issues as distinct from others, because they're on the list.
Thank you.
So, councillors, if I take it that everyone's happy with the explanations being given to date, that the recommendation is there, and if there's no more commentary, can I have all four?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 3, councillors, the annual operation plan 2020-2021. We have a recommendation on the next page. Can I move in a second, please? Councillor Fry.
I'll second that.
Councillor Leslie, thank you. Any commentary, councillors?
Mr. Chair.
Councillor Reynolds? Yep.
Just as a comment or an observation, the remuneration for the chair and council members is still very much on the lower side. And compared to most other county councils, we have another county council in our local government area, and the remuneration for members of that is roughly three times for the members what we receive. While I'm happy to support this, as in I really think for the time and everything and effort that county council has put into this, and we remunerate our staff and our general manager at a correct level, that we should be looking at the remuneration level to at least compensate for some of the time, given that we get less than $2,000 a year to sit on this county council. Well, I will go with the recommendation, but I just wanted to note that in comparison to most other county councils, we are very much on the bottom end of remuneration, and now, whether it should be acknowledged that we actually do contribute a large amount to this county council and should receive a little bit more remuneration, but I'm happy to go with this recommendation.
Councillor Reynolds, would you be happy then? Do you want me to, with the move and second, just a point there to be that we ask the general manager maybe when we have our next working party that just a general discussion can be had at that next one. I think it's September, October. But we then just have a chat about it then. Would you be happy with that, to have a review of it? Because
Yes.
I'll be honest, I've been here for a long time, and yeah, I don't think we've ever had a look or had a review of it, to be honest.
Yes, that'd be great, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, we could, yep. Councillor Fry just made the comment to basically the words used, profile the other councillors to have a look and have an idea. So if the mover and second are happy, but we'll put the point there, but we'll ask the general manager at our next working party to review the remuneration package for a discussion amongst the councillors.
I have no problems with that as a seconder.
Yep. No worries. Not a problem. If there's no other commentary, councillors, all for?
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you.
Aye.
Item 4, the COVID-19 pandemic update. We have a recommendation here. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please?
Happy to move it.
Yes.
Councillor Ream, Councillor Fry. Okay, any commentary, councillors?
No. Straightforward.
No worries.
Yes.
Yep, Councillor McKibben, sorry.
I'm just wondering, with the release of some restrictions in relation to the pandemic, are we able to basically, with the chemical herbicide sales, are we able to sort of be more proactive?
You're dropping out there, Councillor McKibben, sorry.
Sorry, are we able to be more proactive on the chemical herbicide sales now that some of the restrictions in relation to the pandemic have been released?
Do you, General Manager, Biosecurity Officer?
Mr. Chairman, we have actually been maintaining supply of chemicals as far as possible. The only issue, of course, as you know, was how you had people in person turning up, etc. So in recent times, our phone, of course, is manned person all the time. And if anybody rings up, we make arrangements to either deliver it to them or have them call in. We still haven't been able, just through time and resources, to set up any online mechanism yet, but we also get referrals from some of the suppliers occasionally to get stuff done. But if anybody contacts us, they're not sent away.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we sort of continue to keep our chemical herbicide sales up, because they are a source of revenue for us.
Thank you, Councillor McKibben. Any other commentary, councillors?
Mr. Chair,
Councillor Reynolds?
I'm just wondering about, now that COVID restrictions are continuing to be eased or modified, with regard to the office, which this report says it's remaining physically closed, are we looking at developing a plan that we can get the office physically back open again in the near future? To the General Manager, I suppose, Mr. Chair.
Yep, the General Manager.
Mr. Chairman, one of my after this meeting tasks is, and it's already on my list, is to actually look at how we can open it up. I suspect at a practical level, we'll try and open it up each day, but not for the whole day. The thing that will be a bigger, so we'll have to do some minor adjustments to the entry area to actually deal with the COVID situation, but that's really rearranging or supplementing furniture. The bigger problem we have going forward is that the main room where our biosecurity officers occupy is nowhere near the standard for having more than 2 people present in that office space. So at the moment, we're only allowing our officers in when it's necessary. We've been having field meetings or Zoom meetings, and sometimes individuals use my office when they need it. So I am working on that problem, and the intention is to open up, but probably not full time at this stage.
What about using the council chamber itself at Upper Macquarie? That's a pretty big room.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, the problem with that room is not that it is definitely big, but it's rarely available, because when things are operating normally, which obviously isn't the moment, it's booked out most of the time, and we have trouble even getting our council meetings in there. The other thing is there's a lot more Bathurst Regional Council staff located at that site since the childcare centre closed. So it's problematic, basically.
Fair enough.
Any other questions, councillors? If there's no other questions, councillors, thank you for the report. Can I have all four? Again,
Aye.
Aye.
carried. Thank you. Item 5, council meeting schedule for 2020. It's there in front of us. We have a recommendation over the page. Could I have a move and a seconder?
I'll move that.
Yes.
Councillor Leslie and Councillor McKibben. Any questions? Councillors will add on that suggestion I said earlier, Councillor Reynolds, where I can see now our workshop here in October. So we'll confirm that and we'll look at starting to put items in there.
Mr. Chair, one quick question.
Yes.
Are we looking that we can potentially come back to physically meet at the next one, whether we do it at the Bathurst Regional Council or at the Upper Macquarie County Council meeting room?
Well, I'd be encouraging, like last meeting at the Bathurst Regional Council, we had everyone here, Councillor Fry, didn't we? So we had the social distancing of our staff around as we sit. I guess you can see the chamber. I think I would be encouraging the General Manager, but we can do that if the councillors are so comfortable. But I do also respect it. If you're still a bit uncomfortable at the moment, we can still look at having people Zoom in. Mr. GM.
Mr. Chairman, of course, the thing that caught us short there is that the update to the health order allowing 20 people in a room only came out after the papers went. And the other thing which was important for today was to try out this arrangement which Bathurst Council had previously used, but they don't use Zoom. So we want to see if it would work both in recording terms and just functionality. And I think it's proving to be the case. The other issue is that if we move back to the chamber at Kelso, at the moment we don't have the capacity to actually record and view everybody at the meeting room. So at least in the near term, we'd need to be at Bathurst for as long as it's available.
A follow-on question, Mr. Chair.
Yep, Councillor Reynolds, yep.
With regard to Zoom, with regard to the government decree that we could do both, does this have a timeout that we have to all go back physically, or is it indefinite that we could have some members join, particularly if you happen to not be physically in the area, to continue with meetings at an ongoing time?
Mr. General Manager.
Mr. Chairman, at the moment, the Office of Local Government has said that the arrangement will be in place for 6 months, whereby you have the option, every member and every staff member has the option of being here or not, subject to the social distancing. So going forward, you've got probably another 3 months left. They've allowed themselves to extend it for up to 12 months. And I wouldn't be surprised, given the way the technology is evolving, that it would be a good idea to be able to do it in the future in all situations. You just need to be able to record it.
Yeah.
So at the moment, councillors, yes, Councillor McKibben.
Could I suggest that maybe a submission is made, and I'm only suggesting when we get back to some type of normality, I think following on from Councillor Reynolds, that if a councillor is away or has to be away, and normally, obviously, we'd have to be marked down as absent for the meeting, but if they could attend remotely, that should be obviously acquiesced to with the General Manager's consent. I mean, it's common knowledge that most boards, etc., where there's a member away, they are able to link in via video conferencing, etc., and always has been the case in most company constitutions. I'm not sure why local government has been so reticent to do it. And it is only in the, most meetings, when we get back to some, I would see most of us all being present, but there are occasions when, if you're interstate or you're somewhere else, it'd be actually able to link in via Zoom would be of great benefit, and not have an absent mark against you, and also have your participation in the meeting.
So, Councillor McKibben, taking there, would you like representation made to our state member, to the local government minister, asking clarity on that, and just thinking off the cuff too, maybe we represent 4 different councils, we can actually take it back to our councils as well and ask that question. And if our councils...
Well, I do. I don't mind if it's got something like with the chairman's consent or something like, or the, you know, something like that, so that it's not unreasonably used. I don't think any of us want the idea of someone attending every meeting when we get back to near normality by Zoom or some other means all the time. It's only in those, you know, circumstances where someone is physically away or is planned away and can't attend. I think it's certainly better than the person being absent. I'm interested to hear what other members think.
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Chair.
Yep, Councillor Reid.
Look, I agree with Councillor McKibben. I think not only for when you're travelling, you're away, but there are times when you may be unwell. You physically can't attend a meeting, but you're well enough to participate online. I think having that option there and that flexibility, it should be there. Not as a regular thing, but just as a backup. I think it's critical. I think there'll be a push for...
What do you think, Don and Steve?
Other councillors comment?
If I may, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd be quite happy. I'd be quite happy for members to attend meetings from time to time, as Councillor McKibben said, in an emergency of some kind, or if somebody's away and wants to take part in the meeting. I think it's a good idea, so long as they don't make a habit of it. So, as somebody suggested, you know, with the chairman or the general manager's consent, it will be up to them then to keep an eye on it.
Thank you. Councillor Leslie, have you any comment?
Well, I'm not so sure that I'm that comfortable with it. I like the idea of having meetings where you can see other people, you can read the body language, you get a much better understanding of it. Lithgow Council has had a number of council meetings by Zoom, by WebEx, but they were much better when we started meeting again in person. I felt that there was a better outcomes were done. It also, of course, when council meetings start becoming more ordinary, is that there's a possibility we'll have members of the public turn out. But of course, if it's far more difficult for the members of the public to recognise and understand somebody if they're coming in over a video link. But I won't get hard line on it. If it is such that the chairman gives approval for it, then I wouldn't press my point. They would need to have something to make it such that it doesn't happen as a matter of course, or even doesn't happen for one person on a regular basis.
Thank you. Councillor McKibben?
I mean, I agree with the point that Councillor Member Leslie has put, that, you know, we obviously don't want someone doing it regularly. And first point of call is that we all should attend if we can. I only see this in sort of unusual situations, and, you know, occasionally some of us have to be away, and it might be once a year I see it, and we just, rather than have an absent against you, you can actually attend. But I agree with Councillor Leslie. The optimum is to have everyone present. I'm not veering away from that.
Thank you. Councillor Fry, do you have any comments?
Look, I just endorse Member Leslie McKibben's comments, and I'm basically feeling the same way.
So, councillors, would you be happy with the original thought is just to ask the question, you know, we know we've got a 6 month, potentially 12-month window to work with, that we ask the questions, is this something they're looking at in the future, with maybe flexibility around the chairman, the mayor of the day. Look, I'll admit personally, last year when I broke a bunch of ribs and broke my leg in 3 bits, coming into the chambers really killed me. I would have liked to have done it at home. So, in special circumstances, I guess. But is everyone, I guess I need to know, comfortable we make a request to understand it moving forward with the modern technology we've got? That's a general yes, I'll take.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you. If there's no other commentary about there, the last comment I'll make, that councillors, you'll see that they have a workshop We've got it to be confirmed as it's got there. If there's certain points, things you want discussed, can we start maybe getting those in soon so the general manager, we can look at them to schedule, because I think the last one worked well. So thank you. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried.
Aye.
Thank you. Item 6, personal landholder information protection guide. We have a recommendation here. Could I have a move and second as councillors?
Yes.
Councillor Fry, Councillor McKibben. No worries. Any questions, commentary, councillors? Okay, we've had silence. I'll take that everyone is happy with the document. All for?
Aye.
Against?
Aye.
Carried.
Aye.
Item 7, debt management policy. Over the page, we have a recommendation again. Can I have a move and a second of councillors?
Yes.
Happy with the second.
Councillor McKibben, Councillor, was that?
Councillor Ring.
Ring, sorry.
That's all right, mate.
Any commentary,
Yeah.
councillors? Questions? Yeah, Councillor McKibben.
Yes. I just suggested one change to the general manager for consistency in the document, I think. But apart from that, I was happy with it. There was a little bit of inconsistency between one page and the other.
And are you happy how that's going to be sorted?
I think the general manager came back to me and said, yes, he agreed, was going to amend it slightly. Is that correct, general manager?
Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, yes, I noted and agreed with the need for the change. It was sort of one thing was saying it one way and one was saying it the other, and it wasn't helpful the way I did it.
Yeah.
So it has been.
So basically, the way the general manager, the concept was that the general manager comes to us to suggest with a thing to say that he believes that because of a number of circumstances, debt should be waived, but it's up to the council to make the decision. And this is in line with, I think, part of a resolution that Councillor Reynolds put up some time ago. And it was just a little bit inconsistent in two places, so we've just amended it to make that consistent.
Thank you for your input. There's no other questions, councillors.
I have a question.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Leslie, sorry.
That's all right. I was just wondering if somebody is put on the list as being an unreliable debtor, is there a process by which that person can get off that list?
Yeah, I guess we may have not done that one.
Mr. Chairman, there isn't a particular process that's been defined at this stage, and I'd have to say that if I was putting the list together tomorrow, there's 3 people that will be on it, and they're 3 people that we should not have been dealing with for a number of years, but reluctantly we did. But as for getting off it, I suspect it's no easy task, because to get onto that list, you basically have to have produced bad debts and probably in that process taken us to court as well. And we probably lost. I'm not sure, but so I haven't got a procedure for that, no, and I hadn't envisaged it one way or the other.
Any other question?
Mr. Chair, may I make a suggestion?
Councillor Reynolds?
Potentially to answer Councillor Leslie's query, that you could possibly look at something like a 50% deposit up front or something along those lines, with maybe a way to, or pay fully up front for the next course before you possibly get off that list. Might be an option that general manager could look at.
Step your way back.
They have to do that anyway. They have to pay 100% up front, or some we don't deal with if they're on that list.
Yep.
What I would suggest is maybe like the bankruptcy legislation, they have to have a 5-year good record of paying or something. But if we're not going to do business with them, we won't have that record.
That counts as one thing we need to have buried within our policy document. Well, not buried, I shouldn't use that word, but we should have entrenched in our documentation. If that's the case, we need to probably have a meeting where it's discussed and have the wording right that we all agree on, and have it within our policy, because we can't just present it to someone if it's not part of policy of Upper Macquarie County Council.
Mr. Chair, could I suggest that this be put into as another workshop item?
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, no, that is a good idea.
Because this thing's had discussion on. So, councillors, you're happy about we've got a second point for our working party? It looks like
Yes.
that's going to occur. Councillor Ring, sorry.
No, I agree. Yeah, I think it's a good idea to do it. Yeah.
Thank you. If there's no further comment, council, all for? Against, carried. Thank you. Item 8, work health and safety policy. We open the page, we have a recommendation. Can I move a second to councillors?
I move.
I'll second that.
Reynolds, Councillor Leslie. Any comments, councillors? Councillor McKibben, I think that is.
Yes, so we've got the work health and safety policy. Is there a procedure, or are we working on the procedure?
Mr. Chairman, there's actually a very, very comprehensive set of procedures as thick as your wrist.
Yes.
And we're working through that. This has really taken the higher level, let's say,
That's right, yeah.
philosophical, stuff out the front to make that clear. And then the rest of it actually needs to be, or parts of the rest of it need to be reviewed, because they're forms and procedures and checklists, and they need to be made relevant to what we're doing now. Most of them are, I think, but somebody actually has to go through and check them. There's a lot of work in that, but it has started. So it's a work in progress, probably for another 12 months, I'd say.
I guess, Mr. GM, you'll keep us posted. Yes?
And the only other thing I raised with the general manager, just a small thing about, what was it? I think it was the drug testing or alcohol testing. I read the rewording there, and I'm still a bit worried that it's a little muddy in about the random testing in the workplace. I just think it should be a separate bullet, so it's absolutely clear it's not linked to a return to work necessarily or something from medical.
So a clear
anyway, I can discuss that with the general manager offline, if that's clear. When I read it through, I thought, yes, it's an improvement, but I'm not sure it's still absolutely clear that we can test when someone returns to work after having been on drugs, basically, and we can also undertake, of all staff, random drug tests. It almost seemed the second was slightly linked to the first, whereas I think they should be two distinct points.
No, fair comment. Look, if Councillor McKibben, if you're happy to off air and have discussions with the general manager, then I'll ask the general manager if it's a bit of a working document, then to email back to our councillors for commentary moving forward, if everyone's comfortable with that.
Look, basically, I think it's a good document, I think the general manager did a good job on the aerial area that Councillor Reynolds raised, and has obviously dealt with contractors as well. But that was the only issue I had on the reword. Yeah.
Otherwise, thank you. No further comment, councillors. If that's the case, all for, against, carried. Okay, councillors, item 9, the Weed Biosecurity Operation Program update. We have a recommendation as per usual. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, for this?
Yes.
Councillor McKibben. Councillor Fry, are you happy? Yep. Okay, councillors, any commentary? Councillor McKibben?
Look, I thought it was very good.
We're losing you. Could you look at it straight ahead? You're better when you're looking straight ahead.
Yeah, I've got two computers going. I'm sorry. So page 20, I like the graph there. And I also appreciated that we're evening up the spend vis-a-vis the contributions from the particular councils. But I think in particular, what will be of interest to all our relevant councils is the chart on page 20, which clearly shows what activity we're actually performing and doing. And obviously we're up to 15 penalty notices, but it's also the other notices that are just as important. The control notices, 1,130 issued. The control notices resolved, 321, which is really good. And the biosecurity directions issued. So I think the success in the resolution under control notices is telling us also the number of notices, etc., we've issued. So I think it shows, that we're achieving our objectives and getting there by coercion as much as having to issue penalty notices.
Thank you, Councillor McKibben. I think every council.
So I would thank the general manager, the chief weeds officer, and the staff.
I'll make sure the general managers pass it on. But as I was saying, I think we're all very happy with the way the directions that Upper Macquarie County Council is going. So I do appreciate your comment on that. Any other comments, councillors?
Another question.
Councillor Reynolds? Yep.
So just a question to the general manager, given we've got just over a week left, has the staff been able to even up so that Bathurst and Laney and Oberon are pretty well all on the money, or very, very close, within 0.5%?
We're not worried.
Mr. Chairman, last look, and it's pretty difficult right towards the end to get it precise, but at the last look, we were within 1% across the board. The trouble with this measure is you don't know until it's over, and that's why we try to keep it as close as possible. However, I actually have another version of that data, which is a running tally since we started monitoring it from July 2018. So that's the other one we look at planning-wise to try and, over the running tally, keep them in line. So between the two measures, I think in the long term, it should be okay. And the other thing to remember is that I think many members have said it before, a lot of roads are running alongside one council and another, and there's plenty of opportunity for infestation. So a little bit here and there probably isn't the end of the world, but we're just going to keep tracking it.
Any other comment, councillors? Last chance. If there isn't, all four.
One more comment, if I may. I noticed on the first inspections, last time we looked at this, we're approaching 50%, I think, being 3 or 4s, but that's falling back a bit now. Is that due to the fact that we're not being able to target the bad properties as well, or because we've targeted most of them already? Any views on that?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, it's another one of these cycles that is hard to graph properly, but what's happened to produce this change in result is in the last few months, the majority of our work has been doing re-inspections. And of course, the minute you go and do re-inspections where the people have actually complied with our requirements, the risk rating is now low, and it appears that we're sort of failing in one respect, but it's actually a sign of success because that's where all of those complied with control notices are showing up in the data. And then our next phase will be to do lots of new inspections. So you should see another increase in the graph for higher risk as we still manage to get somewhere near our 50%. So it's an interesting wave, which we...
You're right. Comment, councillors?
Can I ask one more question?
Yes, Councillor Reynolds, yes, you can.
Following on from Councillor McKibben's report, Member McKibben and the General Manager, is there a plan or a strategy for the next 6 months to start, given we're moving very close to the 1st of July, for the next 6 months with regard to inspections?
GM, or would you like the Biosecurity Officer? Yep, Mr. GM.
Mr. Chairman, put it this way, the plan is, and if you mean is the one on a piece of paper in any logical, not particularly, but we're discussing the plan all the time. The plan going forward is that we're just about finishing off most of our Crown land and forestry inspections to get out by the end of June so that the government agencies have got enough work to put into their programs for next year. So that's where we've been recently. We're then setting up, we're also doing at the moment and for the next month or so as well, a lot of activity on the roadside re-inspections to see how successful the earlier ones of last year and the previous season have been as part as we build up the next road program. So that's re-inspections, and we'll pick up some new ones there as well. And then property-wise, we were talking the other day, we had a couple of Zoom meetings with our field staff to discuss this whole issue of how we keep on targeting the bad places and not wasting time on the good ones with new inspections. And they're all coming back with their lists of where they want to go next to sort of help drive it along. So I will actually have a better annual plan of what we're planning on doing in that broad operational level. And the Chief Weeds Officer is also now doing monthly detailed plans with his staff to make sure they're actually targeting our priorities and reflecting seasonal preferences for aerial, roadside, etc.
And one follow-on question, Mr. Chair. Could we potentially, as another 2 items on the workshop agenda, as in a roadside, just sort of an update or a strategy discussion, and also with regard to inspections, as in it might be worth discussing further the strategy that the General Manager is developing at that workshop in October.
Yes, that's been written down. Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Councillor McKibben, yes?
Thank you. Sorry again. One of the things I think, you know, we're picking up a lot of the properties that are obviously bad weed infestations that we can obviously see from the roads, etc. What I'm not certain we're absolutely getting to is there are a lot of properties where you look very good on the front, but if you go to the back, there can be bad blackberry or serrated tussock. I mean, it has been raised with me by several people about, well, the front of that property looks good, but where it joins me on the back, you've got no idea how bad it is, sort of thing. Obviously, if we'd had the satellite imagery, it would have assisted us, and obviously the drones can help us. How do we sort of get over that problem? I know that we sort of get a fairly good view as to properties, and maybe that view is sort of perception from what we can see from the main roads when we drive down at their inspectors, etc. And obviously we're relying on comments from members of the community, but I think there are still properties that all look very nice at the front, but out the back are not particularly good. Either the General Manager or Chief Biosecurity Officer, any comment on that?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the first comment, and that is that I think I agree with the sentiment, and that is some of the reports that I get back, you know, ad hoc reports through staff or members of the public, is that the only way we identify some of those properties is when the adjacent landowner complains effectively and says, you know, I've been doing all this work, but there's a property over the back that is really out of control, and it's not one that you would have even thought of going to probably based on going along the main road. So I agree the problem exists, but maybe if the Chief Weeds Officer could comment at a practical level.
Chief Biosecurity Officer.
Yeah, if I can for you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, as the GM said, and as Councillor McKibben was saying, a lot of those properties we do find out from surrounding landowners, and most of them aren't shy about telling us if there's an issue next door. A lot of them are also picked up because if we're inspecting one property, the officers are obviously keeping an eye on what's sort of in the surrounding area as well. So they're not just looking at that individual property they're also noticing what's next door and the property surrounding us. That's where a lot of them are picked up too. They'll do one property and then they'll notice 2 or 3 more that need attention as well.
Further comment, if I might.
Yes.
So there may be properties, for instance, that have undertaken an aerial spraying program, let's say 3-4 years ago. And perception-wise, that program might have been very successful. The problem is there hasn't been follow-up, and the weeds are coming back. When we do an aerial weed program, do we sort of try and follow up after that to check that they are following up with spot spraying or whatever's necessary to keep those weeds under control? I raise it because just in, I suppose, the last 3 or 4 months, a couple of people have mentioned things like that to me.
I'll ask the GM to answer that.
Mr. Chairman, I suppose at one level, I'm giving this is to do with the time frame we've been at this new system. So we've had nearly 2 years now under the new system, and I'd say half of the inspections we've done haven't yet been resolved, and that's partly because they were relatively recent or whatever. It's taken us a year to a year and a half from finding some properties to actually getting something significant done. As their let's say the landholder's record develops in terms of, did you respond quickly and deal with the problem? Do you have a reasonably good management practice and this was just an anomaly down in the back paddock or whatever? So one angle here is that the officers themselves are, and we've now got the system working. Remember we talked about R2s.
Yes.
So that system is now up and running in the register. And I think when I had a look the other day, there's about 80 properties that are in that category. So that's one way we keep track of those sort of properties. But I think the other side of it is, if we're not careful, we'll end up with the resources we have looking at, let's say, 4,000 properties in total, and just going back over a cycle of every 3 or 4 years. And that way we'll end up missing the new ones. So I'm accepting there's a problem there, and I just don't know how we always get to do the right stuff given the limited resources we have. I acknowledge the problem.
And I fully appreciate it. I fully appreciate that. My concern is that these properties themselves are spending money on an area weed spraying program, and they haven't followed up, which is almost like wasting the initial spraying. And I would have thought it was in their interest, but some properties are not following up, which to most of us would seem ridiculous. But once you spend a huge amount on the initial spraying from the weed program, but I'm just, I don't know how we encourage people to do that follow up, I suppose.
Mr. Chair, can I suggest that we
I'll
take
just give it to him just to answer a little bit more on Councillor McKibben's comment.
Mr. Chairman, just in relation to that matter, I think it's also important that you realise that the officers do know who some of the reluctant property owners are. So the ones that the only reason they got involved, say, in the aerial program or did any work was because they had a direction or they knew that a penalty was coming next. So when you have people like that, then they would typically turn into some of those 2Rs where the guys would be wanting to go back in 12 months' time and see, well, are they doing any follow-up? Because quite clearly, one spray on an atrocious property isn't going to resolve terribly much. It's just the start.
Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to suggest that maybe this part of the discussion could also go to the workshop in October to maybe look at some strategies or discuss this issue a bit further.
We're filling that one up pretty quick. Yeah, it's a fair comment. Thank you. Any other comments, questions, councillors? No? Okay, all for? Against, carried.
Yes.
Up. Okay, councillors, we're now due to go into confidential committee. Just 1 sec while we fix the mics and the recordings. Yeah, we'll do this bit. Yep, are you right? In a sec. Okay, councillors, got a motion for confidential committee as a whole. Can I have a mover or a seconder?
Moved.
Yes, I'll move.
Reynolds, Councillor McKibben. Look, as there's no members of the public here for representation, all for?
Aye.
Against,
Yes.
carried. Could we have the mics and recording off, please? Right. Councillors, can I have a move and second to move into open council? Councillor McKibben.
Moved.
Councillor Reynolds,
Second
thank
that.
you. Could I now ask the General Manager to please read the recommendations of the confidential committee?
Mr. Chairman, in relation to confidential item weed risk register report, the resolution was the weed risk register report is noted. In relation to item 11, the confidential legal matter, the resolution was that the report on current legal matters be noted.
Can I move a second to accept the motions put just then? Councillor Reynolds, Councillor Leslie. Have a recommendation the committee of a whole be adopted. Councillor.
Move that.
Councillor Leslie, all for?
Aye.
Against, carried. I declare the meeting closed at 3 minutes past 4. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Catch us all
Thank you,
later.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everyone.
We'll just get the chairman to, the general manager to
Stop the recording. Done.